What's up, YouTube? Hope everybody's having an awesome pre-ban announcement week. So clearly, as you can tell by the title of the video, that's kind of what we're going to be going over today. Few different things I want to touch on. For example, what I think is going to happen in this upcoming modern ban announcement. I'm not really going to touch on like the Pioneer side and stuff like that. I don't have enough Pioneer experience to really know what the shakeups in that format might look like, what the ramifications might be. So we're going to focus more on the modern side. Going to go over what I think is likely to happen, what I want to happen, and then most importantly, I'll spend a little extra time going over like some of the ramifications, what I think the results of this ban are going to look like. Both from what I think will get banned and what I think would happen if we made some changes that I'd like to see. We already have a video on YouTube before from a few months ago of like going through the modern ban list and kind of ranking everything as to whether I think it's safe to unban, needs to stay on the ban list, what my thoughts are there. So if you want to see that, you can definitely find the link to it on my YouTube. But this is going to be more about like the current modern metagame. What's going on now? What did we hear in the weekly MTG announcement? What are we thinking? And so yeah, we'll just kind of go from there. So if you haven't seen the announcement yet, you can probably just get on YouTube, search up like weekly MTG ban discussion from what week? The end of November 25th, somewhere around there. And it'll give you a pretty good idea of what is being discussed, what's being thought about. Doesn't give you any definitives of what is or is not being banned. So don't take it as like the end all be all. But it at least gives some thoughts behind the process and the mindset that a lot of the ban team is using to come up with their decisions. So if you don't really know what they're looking at, what they're thinking, it's a really cool dive into like the behind the scenes work. So what we did hear from that announcement is things like they're watching Scam and Four Color, Tron, a few other decks. They noticed the lack of X1s in the format. So that's kind of led to the speculation that cards like Fury, Orcish Bowmaster are at the top of the list of things that could potentially get banned this upcoming, Tuesday. As far as what I think is going to happen, no changes. Here's a new pack to buy. Have fun. No, I don't think that's actually going to happen twice. I think they pretty well stated in the weekly statement that something is getting the axe. From the sound of it, they seem to imply that Fury was going to be the main target. So Fury being the Evoke Elemental from MH2, the red Evoke Elemental that allows 4 damage divided among any number of target creatures or planeswalkers. Most notably in the Scam archetype, the red-black Scam, and the 4-color Up the Beanstalk decks. It's seen play in decks like Murktide, a lot of fringe decks, like I've seen it in Charbelcher and crazy decks like that. But the idea here being it kind of cuts down on deck diversity by not allowing aggressive creature decks into the format, because if something like Rhinos or Scam is able to very easily evoke these and potentially get them back with an Undying effect, then it really limits your ability to play small costed creatures in the early turns of the game. Fury can sometimes be a free kill 2 creatures and deploy another threat. So you'll see lines out of Scam like Evoke Fury plus play a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, or Evoke Fury plus play a Dolphy, something like that. So the tempo advantage that Fury provides can be pretty catastrophic for creature decks that are trying to get on the board early and get some sort of snowball going. Personally, I think that the ban announcement is going to come down to just Fury. and nothing else. And they're going to keep it minimalistic, hit the evoke elemental, and kind of use that as, hey, we took care of scam. We hit 4 colors. We hit rhinos. We're letting aggressive creature decks have some breathing room. Do I think that's going to be enough ultimately? No. No, I don't. So I know that Wizards in the past has been pretty gun shy when it comes to bans. We especially saw during things like the Hogak era, where it was, okay, we're going to ban Bridge from Below, and then we're going to ban Faithless Looting, and then we're going to ban Hogak, instead of just getting rid of Hogak to begin with. They oftentimes don't like getting rid of the actual thing, instead opting to get rid of some enablers here and there. And I kind of think that's what we're going to see here, is we're going to get Fury tagged and run into a situation where, like, the One Ring, and shifting around the frame a little bit, the One Ring up the Beanstalk still create problematic play patterns, but one of the enablers for the deck is gone instead of the actual problem. So that's kind of shifting into what I would like to see happen. I would like to see 4 bans. Fury is one of them, but in addition to Fury, I would like to see the One Ring. So the One Ring, I think, is one of the biggest players in terms of creating unwinnable game states after like turn 3 or 4. I think that this breaks so many mid-range mirrors, like wide open, control matchups wide open, if they're able to limit the downside of the ring, the burden counters. And unfortunately, the ring kind of does that to itself. Just playing a second copy of ring negates all the downside of the first copy of the One Ring. So once these decks start combining the ring with like Shieldred, Omnath, anything that gains life, it gets very, very out of control very quickly. I have seen people argue that the One Ring is healthy because it enables a bunch of decks that were previously pushed out of the format. For example, like Storm, Twiddle Storm. I've seen like Charbelcher with the One Ring. I've seen some crazy off-the-wall decks that I haven't seen in forever that are only functioning because they have the One Ring. And I think that's not a healthy way to allow Modern to continue. I think getting rid of the One Ring would force those decks to adapt to a different game plan. But with decks like Fury, or not decks like Fury, cards like Fury going, decks like Scam, Red Black Rhinos, the 4-color piles getting a significant knockback, I think opens up space for those other decks to kind of figure out their own line anyway. Second card, up the Beanstalk. We've gotten into this meta of high-cost cards for cheap or free rates between Leyline Binding, the Evoke Elementals. Even though Fury's going, we still have Solitude, we still have Leyline Binding, we still have Grief, we still have these affinity artifacts that play for free. Ton of stuff that still triggers up the Beanstalk. So kind of in the same realm of what's it called? Go over to the ban list. Kind of in the same realm of Birthing Pod, where Birthing Pod was banned for restricting the design space of creatures going forward, because now you have to worry about everything being a combo or being tutorable off Birthing Pod. I think Up the Beanstalk limits the design space of 5+ CMC cards going forward, which when you're like me and you're constantly scouring for, okay, how do I make the big stupid thing cheaper, like Delve, which we know was kind of a mistake. This limits limits the design space of those and makes them significantly more powerful than they should be. Which, if we've already seen the Evoke Elementals busted, Delve busted, Phyrexian Mana busted. So when you make these big things cheaper, we know that's led to problems in the past. This is just giving another feather in the cap of those cards being problematic. I don't think there's a reason to make them more problematic than they potentially would be. So I think Up the Beanstalk needs to go. And then finally, Orcish Bowmaster. I'm very much in the camp that you cannot have the One Ring and the Beanstalk in the format without Bowmaster, and you shouldn't have Bowmaster in the format without the One Ring and the Beanstalk. They have to kind of self-police each other. But Bowmaster also works on that argument that WOTC gave of limiting the ability of X1s to be present or even impactful in the modern format. So I think getting rid of Bowmaster helps open up the space for X1s in the future, or even existing X1s like Dark Confidant to maybe make a return. Obviously, you'd have to still have that discussion about Wrenn and 6, but Bowmaster, I think, is shown to be the more impactful card than Wrenn and 6 in recent memory. Not that I think Wrenn and 6 should stay around, just that Bowmaster is kind of Wrenn and 6 on steroids when it comes to dealing with X1s. So Fury, Bowmaster, the One Ring, Beanstalk, the 4 cards that I think should get the axe. My fear here is that they're going to ban Fury and ban something like Orcish Bowmaster and leave the One Ring and Beanstalk. And those 2 cards are just going to go absolutely insane at pushing everything else like out of the format. Where I think if you just cut all 4 of them now, and even if it's like cut Fury, cut up the Beanstalk, cut Orcish Bowmaster, the One Ring has gotten less play than it did when it initially came out. But I think cutting back Scam so significantly, and especially cutting back Bowmaster, is just going to lead the numbers of One Ring going right back up through the roof. So I'd like to see them just take the initiative and like get all 4 of those out of the format. Continuing on with the changes that I wish they would make, we got a few unbans, 4 and then a 5th with an asterisk here. First off, Bridge from Below. I hate the card with a passion. I don't think there's any reason to have it in the format, because I think that any deck that includes Bridge from Below just immediately becomes problematic. And it's very possible that this card doesn't need to be in the format simply because Yawgmoth exists. Yawgmoth sacking dudes, drawing cards, making 2/2s sounds way too horrible from the very start. So I think this is like the very, very bottom of my list of cards that could potentially get a shake up. But I think with how big of a benefit Yawgmoth gets from the Scam decks being gone to begin with, and I don't think Bridge from Below needs to come off. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned it. Second, Blazing Shoal. Personally, I think Blazing Shoal is completely fine. We're in a world now where Solitude, Leyline Binding, Path to Exile. Path was around when Blazing Shoal was. Fatal Push now. There's so many cheap kill spells. Infect has been irrelevant for I don't know how long. We don't have any aggressive creature combo decks that involve combat. They're all like Yawgmoth that don't care about combat. So I'd like to see the game get back to turning dudes sideways, and I think Blazing Shoal is safe to unban on that regard. It could be that there's too many turn 2 kills with it, but I think realistically it's a deck that like is wanting to combo turn 4 or so with protection, which is kind of in the realm of, yeah, this is fine when we're getting Amulet tightened turn 3 every other match. Third on the list, Hypergenesis. I think with footfalls and living end, especially footfalls getting a hit, living end gets a little bit of a bump, and I'll talk about that in a minute when I get more into the data. But I think Hypergenesis is a card that personally I'd be okay with. It kind of loses the same games that Living End and Rhinos lose, where you counter the thing coming off suspend, you got Chalice, whatever. But it also gets a lot worse against like hand hate, because, hey, I can thought seize the big stupid thing out of your hand, and now your Hypergenesis is useless. So you get a little more interaction ability. Whereas like Rhinos especially doesn't care about having Rhinos in hand, or doesn't care about having anything in hand. They just want to hit a Cascade spell and hit the Rhinos. This at least allows that extra level of, hey, you need to hit the Cascade spell and you need to have something relevant in your hand, which if your opponent's able to deal with the Hypergenesis or deal with your hand, then the top deck potential of Hypergenesis just falls off the table completely. Finally, the fourth one, before I get to the asterisk, the fourth one is the only one on the list that I would like actively want to see get unbanned. And that is Ponder. We've seen Preordain come off the ban list. Hasn't had that big of an impact. It's jumped straight into decks like Murktide, some of the control decks. I've seen things like Zoo trying out Ponder just for a little extra maneuverability. I've seen like Dimir Control try out Ponder, or try out Preordain. I mean, Ponder, I think, is not as big of an upgrade over Preordain to warrant a huge amount of concern. Like, I think Ponder is great for combo decks, which are non-existent right now, unless you're considering Cascade to be a combo deck. But Ponder can't be played in the Cascade decks, can't be played in the Beanstalk decks. You're not seeing decks splash for Preordain, so I don't believe they're going to splash for Ponder. Helps out Control, helps out blue-based mid-range, which are archetypes that you can very easily say, based on the Goldfish metadata, need some help. Like we've seen Murktide on just a straight decline here. None of the decks above Murktide could play Ponder. Your like Omnath, 4-color Omnath, Creativity are the next decks that could perceivably play it. And they've been taking hits left and right over the last few months. So I don't think giving them a bone here to fight back against Rhinos, Yawgmoth, Living End, things like that, is the worst idea in the world. For gameplay perspective, Preordain's allowing you to look at the top two, decide if you want those or not. If you don't, you put them on the bottom, draw a card. So you're seeing 3 cards, the third card, drawing that third card, and the potential of chipping away those other 2. Ponder, look at the top 3, so you see 1 farther. Decide if you want those cards. So just like Preordain, do you want these cards or not? I realize it's an all or nothing. It's a little bit different, but deciding if you want them, drawing a card after you put them back. So with Ponder, you're always going to get one of those 3 cards unless you shuffle, in which case you have a chance of redrawing the exact same thing that you just put on the bottom of the deck. Where Preordain, you're always going to put something on the bottom, or if you put something in the bottom, you're always going to draw something different. You're not going to draw the card that you put on the bottom. So there is a little more of an element of randomness to Ponder, despite the getting to see 3 cards instead of 2. Again, I don't think it's big enough of an upgrade over Preordain to be extraordinarily concerned about it, but I do think it would help out a lot of these blue-based mid-range control decks that have not had anything good going on in the last few months. So let's get out of the unbanned. Oh, the asterisk one. This is going to be the really subjective one. And no, I'm not talking about mental misstep. I'm sure everybody knows how much I love misstep. I would love to see it unbanned, but it's not on this list. I know, flame me in the comments. Yeah, let's talk about the Ella cat in the room. Lurrus of the Dream Den. Definitely a controversial pick. I'm sure everybody's like turning off the video at this point and saying, oh no, we don't want to go back to a Lurrus bobble meta. I don't know if we would. Like, look at the things that have been introduced since Lurrus went away. We've got Scam, we've got the Evoke Elementals, we've got Rhinos that doesn't get any value out of Lurrus. We got the Beanstalk decks that can't play Lurrus. Or you could if you play Lurrus and your only way of triggering Beanstalk is like Time Warp. But no Leyline bindings. Yawgmoth can't run Yawg. Amulet Titan can't run it. Hammer Time is probably the best deck right now to regain Lurrus access. Murktide, you can't run Murktide in Lurrus, but you could run Teamer with Questing Druid, but you'd have to splash white or black in your Teamer deck. That's getting pretty edgy. Living in Tron, Burn Can, Hardened Scales gets a big boost from it, which might not be the worst because Hardened Scales is also losing one of its good matchups in Scam. It might need some help. Especially if Yawgmoth kind of takes over. Mono Black Coffers can't run Karn or Shieldred. You can't run the One Ring with Lurrus. So it is kind of the thing that if the One Ring stays around, Beanstalk stays around, maybe Lurrus is something worth looking into. Just a thought. I think there's been a lot of introductions since the cat got put on the ban list that it's at least worth a discussion. Whether or not anything came out of it, I doubt it, but I got to bring up conversation topics. And finally, I wanted to go over like what I think the ramifications from the ban will be. And for that, we're bringing up some meta performance from the folks over at MTG Meta, where we get to see an awesome little breakdown of different decks, win rates. This is over, I think, premier events over the last like 3 months, three and a half months, something like that. So all data is fairly limited, but as you can see in like the bottom right corner of every block, that's the number of matches that they've pulled this data from. So you'll see like tighter confidence intervals in the top of each box based on the number of matches that got reported. So you do get to see some pretty cool numbers here. What we're really looking for is decks that had either a positive win rate against 4-color, Scam, and Teamer Rhinos. You can see the names labeled here at the top. Or decks that had a bad matchup against those three. And those are going to be kind of our biggest winners and losers at level 0. Level 0 is, here's what's banned, here's what's changed. These are the decks that directly get impacted from that. Now, that doesn't take into account level 1, level 2. Like, all right, these decks get better. That's level 0. Level 1 would be, all right, what decks get better because their matchups are adjusted based on who gets better or worse in level 0. Level 2, what gets better in level 1. You kind of see the transition there. So just to kick it off, you could look at something like Amulet Titan. Really good matchup against the 4-color mid-range decks. Well, if Beanstalk or One Ring goes, those decks take a hit. Fury already knocking back a little bit, but Amulet doesn't care as much about Fury as some of the other variants. Bad matchup against Scam. Bad matchup against Teamer Rhinos. So overall, the deck gets 2 improved matchups. A positive matchup gets hurt a bit. Overall, a winner. The level 1 would be, hey, Yawgmoth is going to get better with less Fury in the format or no Fury in the format. So if Yawgmoth is a horrible matchup for Titan, then that might end up kind of neutralizing it a bit, as well as living in creativity. So just going down brief kind of overview of some of the decks. Burn, 2 of its 3 good matches. And when I say like 2 of the 3, I'm just talking 4-color mid-range, Scam, Rhinos, the prominent Fury decks, if that's going to be the ban. 2 of the 3 of those for Burn are positive matchups, so overall, slight loser. Creativity has, according to this, at least positive against 4-color and Scam, bad against Rhinos, so overall, slight loser. It's 2 of its good matchups are getting worse. So, less good matchups, overall loser. Shadow, bad into 4-color, bad into Rhinos, good into Scam, overall winner. 2 out of 3 getting better because they're less prevalent in the format or non-existent. Dimir Control, winner. Domains Zoo, winner. 2 of its bad matchups going. Tron, winner. Hammer Time, loser. Hardened Scales, loser. Big loser for Hardened Scales. It's got really positive win rates against Scam and Rhinos. And positive, but not by a whole much against 4-color. So 3 positive matchups, all taking a hit. Makes Hardened Scales a loser. Murktide, big winner. 4-color, Scam, and Rhinos, all bad matchups, all getting improved. Jun Saga, winner. Living End, winner. 4-color and Scam get better. Merfolk, winner. Mono Black, kind of a push, but a winner. What I really like, though, is this other category. So all the decks not mentioned above. We see 22.7% against 4-color, 21.1 against Scam, 25 against Rhinos. So the non-meta decks, huge winners if 4-color, Scam, and Rhinos get a hit. And I love to see that. I love to see these non-meta decks getting a nice little boost, because that's what you want to see for format health, is people being able to play different decks, play what they want to play. And then finally, Yawgmoth, winner. Scam and Rhinos gone, but 4-color gets a bit of a drop. So 2 of its 3 good, or 2 of its 3 bad matchups gone. So that's just like, again, the level 0. What I think realistically will happen, we'll have to jump back over to the Goldfish metagame. If Scam, Rhinos, Beanstalk, the top 3 here all get hit, then obviously like Yawgmoth could be one of the big winners. Titan, Hammer Time, Murktide, any of those could potentially jump up. I think what we're going to see, though, is decks like the 4 or 5-color Omnath piles pick up a big percentage of that meta, because now all the Beanstalk players going back to Omnath, probably picking up the One Ring again. So I expect to see the One Ring really take off. Amulet Titan, Yawgmoth, already really good One Ring decks. Tron, really good One Ring deck. So if they don't ban the One Ring, I think Omnath pulls back ahead. I think that Amulet Titan stays really strong. Yawgmoth gets a little bit better. I think Rhinos is still going to be prevalent. Not as good, but still present. Still putting up results. If they ban Fury and like the One Ring Bowmaster, then I think we're going to see more Murktide. I think we're going to see more Hammer because of more Murktide. I think we see a little bit more Yawgmoth, but not as much. Like, Bowmaster did help that deck quite a bit, and I think losing that is a non-zero sum, but it's not the most impactful banning. Amulet Titan's still really, really good, even without the One Ring. It was good before, it'll be good long after the One Ring's gone. Hardened Scales gets better. Coffers dies. The 4-color Omnath deck, I think if you get rid of Fury, Beanstalk and the One Ring. I think that deck struggles. Zoo gets better, creativity gets better. But ultimately, I think a lot of these improvements kind of become a push because you get to take all the decks that have been pushed down heavily over the last year or so, year or 2 years, and give them a bit of a facelift. And honestly, I could not be more excited about that possibility. I think there's a ton of really awesome decks in Modern that are just kind of hidden down in the View More section, like Thopter Sword decks, really cool. Infect, Boomer Jund. We see like Goryo's Vengeance, Storm, Actual Storm, Humans, all of these kind of cool decks. I think could really benefit from a shakeup. And to me, that would be a really exciting thing to get to be a part of, to present new content when a new Modern format is kind of overhauled. So that's my hope. We'll see what happens. I don't really like speculating too much. It's kind of one of the reasons that we're not doing a bunch of streams and stuff this weekend, is because we don't know what Modern is going to look like next week. And so if we go too on board with XYZ is getting banned, XYZ is getting unbanned, ultimately it could end up just not mattering. But as a Shadow player, what I'm a little terrified of, like Yawgmoth and Amulet Titan kind of running things, but I think we can adapt to those a lot easier than we can adapt to like the Beanstalk decks and Scam and some of those busted early turn decks. So we'll see. But as always, if you're enjoying this kind of content, enjoying this commentary, feel free to drop a follow on YouTube. Greatly helps. Otherwise, we'll have a link to the live stream below, link to the Discord if you want to come talk your thoughts and opinions. Yeah, we'll just see what happens on Tuesday. So I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. I'll catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.